Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll read the school district's mission statement. Grounded by our history as one of the oldest publicly supported schools in Wisconsin, Mineral Point School District is the heart of a small community that educates and inspires our students for a bright future in a big world. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Bergstrom.
Oh,
Bush.
she's
Here.
Dunn.
here.
Harris.
Here.
Eichner.
Here.
Johnston.
Here.
Gelding.
Here.
Rachel is out sick, if no one had heard. Okay, start with recognitions. Mr. Wainwright.
Well, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Jack Tippett, who's here
All right.
to speak a little bit about the Green Bay Packers grant opportunity.
Thank you. So your 15 minutes can start early.
Let's see right there.
Yep, that's perfect.
Yeah.
This fall, the middle school student groups were invited to create a service project aimed at benefiting their school, neighborhood, or the community. These 3 students presented their idea to a panel of judges. After reviewing and submitted proposals, 10 projects were chosen to receive funding. Each selected group was awarded a $500 grant provided through the NFL Volunteerism Grant to support the implementation of their projects. Generosity Day took place on December 11th, focusing on giving the gift of time to our elementary students while teaching them about the importance of generosity. Students created cards and gratitude bags to share with members of the community. Cards and bags were given to police, fire, and EMT, nursing homes, veterans, and other members of our community, including local businesses.
So thank you so much and congratulations
Thank you.
on your efforts. Okay. Next up, every team that competes here wants to get into that state tournament opportunity, wants to become a state champion. But the community and the school districts as a whole has an opportunity to earn a second prize, and that is the sportsmanship award. You know, they only give the sportsmanship award out to one team out of a state tournament experience. That's all divisions, all teams, all fans. It's only one. So it is a pretty prestigious honor and represents the level of sportsmanship on the court, but also in the stand, how our fans interact and work with officials. And it kind of extends past the state tournament because they'll reach out sometimes to the places that host the sectional tournaments and how were the teams there. And they might use some of that information in making that final decision. Well, this year, we did not win the sportsmanship award for the volleyball state tournament, but we were honorable mention. And a lot of times the WI requires you to at least compete twice. And you know what, if you win, it's always easy to be a good sport when you win. So a lot of times somebody that makes it to the finals and is a defeated team is one that tends to rise to the top and earn that sportsmanship award. Our school district has been very fortunate. We've won the state tournament and won the sportsmanship award in the same year, which is kind of rare for something like that to happen. But a very prestigious thing to be part of the honorable mention for the WI volleyball state finals. Mineral Point was one of the teams. There were a couple other teams mentioned, as well as honorable mention for this award. But Mineral Point was one of those, and it's rare being in only one event, you know, at the state tournament. So congratulations to our volleyball team, our fans, and our community that made the trip to Green Bay on, you know, being selected for honorable mention, all, you know, for the sportsmanship award. So congratulations. And last but certainly not least, we have a state qualifier in our midst. He's here tonight, so thank you for coming forward, Lincoln. And Angie, would you like to say a few words?
So this is Lincoln Terrell. In early December, we finished our fall sports season for Special Olympics. It was a really long season, right, Lincoln? We've been bowling a long time. We started bowling the week we started school and it just finished in December. So Lincoln was one of 6 athletes from our area that competed at the state fall bowling tournament. There were 1,200 athletes across the state, the largest bowling tournament Special Olympics has ever held. Lincoln came home with a first in his division. And did you bowl singles, on a double, or a team?
Single.
Yep, Lincoln was our one single bowler. The rest of our competitors were doubles team. So he was a single, and this is a highlight for him because it's his first year participating with us. So he had a great first season. So is there anything else you wanted to say, Lincoln? Okay. You wanna shake your hand?
Congratulations, Lincoln. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Good luck and continued success. Thank you very much.
All right. Very fun. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda, which includes minutes, bills payable, credit card statement of activity. We have the regular December meeting, the ad hoc cell phone social media committee that met on the 17th. We've got the finance committee that met on the 6th and personnel that met also on the 6th. So I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda in its entirety, or we can approve each of these individually.
I'll move to approve in its entirety.
Second. Question Skelding. Any comments, questions? Concerns?
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Reesner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Skelding,
Yeah.
Dunn.
Yes. All right, thank you. Next, we'll move to communications. We'll start with board communications received. You want to start, Joan?
The only communication I had over the last month was just a very casual conversation with a community member asking if there was anything, particularly interesting or controversial, and said, we're really grateful the referendum passed, and I didn't really have a lot else that I felt like I could bring to the conversation that I would say were hot topics for us, other than just trying to make sure we're staying on the right side of the average where we've been. That's about it.
Okay.
I had one person talk to me reached out about the middle school football, that they were disappointed that we had approved it, but I explained to them that it wasn't a cost, to us, that we were just allowing them to use the field, and that it was gonna, happen one way or another, either on our field or some other field, so it made more sense to have it here.
You were disappointed from a financial decision?
No, from a health perspective, concussions and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It was on the front page of the Democrat, bold printing that the school board approves tackle football, middle school tackle football. So it was out there.
Yeah. Christie.
Nothing.
I had a couple of good conversations they turned into good conversations with members of the township who received their tax bill and wanted to address the percentage increase. And once we got to the point where the percentage increase reflected their change in value, which hadn't been changed in like 12 or 13 years, that is where the increase lied, not that the referendum wasn't even affecting their tax bill yet, that was just them paying a larger piece of the pie because their property is now valued
Mhm.
larger. But it was interesting. It hadn't occurred to me that we kind of talked about how the valuation would affect what we received, but it didn't occur to me that was, going to be perhaps a perception when the tax bills came that we were the cause, when in fact the valuation out of the whole valuation was just much larger in most cases. So good conversations, but I think good information to have out there that's really the effect of the large percentage of increase on those bills.
Mhm.
Assuming it must have been Township of Mineral Point,
Yes, yeah.
because I know they've been that was the first time they were reassessed, correct?
Yes,
In several
in
years.
several years, and there were some really significant changes in property, in property values.
Yep.
And so some people were really dramatically impacted.
Okay, the only additional thing I had was, had a parent contact me concerned about, basically the culture of the girls' basketball program. So, I've been working with Mr. Wainwright and Mr. Carr, and, the whole admin team is aware, of this concern, and it's being fully investigated. And, I wouldn't say there was a set incident, but it's just like it's something that is being paid close attention to in terms of just addressing the parent concerns and talking to the coaches and making sure all the athletes feel welcome and supported. And so I think it's still ongoing, but no additional concerns, nothing specific for me to share at this point, but just let you know that that's kind of on the radar. Okay. We'll go to citizen communications. Did anyone sign up tonight, Angie? Anyone in the room want to make a comment? Okay. Anyone online? Mary's listening quietly. Okay. We will move on to items for information and discussion. First is the update of our school priorities. Recruitment and retention of staff is number one. Mr. Wainwright, do you have anything to add at this point?
We have 5 student teachers coming into the district. It's the second semester, so will be a lot of new faces, and then we have an intern in the elementary PE position for second semester. So the intern is actually starting a little bit early, kind of helping us out. So he's actually in place now. Grant Hein, who is from Highland, and I worked with Grant's mom when I worked in the Highland School District. So kind of full circle, I introduced myself and told him to tell his mother I said hi, and I no longer finished my sentence, and he said, well, my mom said to say the same thing, that if I got to run into you, to say hi to you as well. So but we have 5 more people coming in the second semester, so we'll be working with them and kind of following up on some of the things we've talked about, through our priority meetings, how we'll try to help support those student teachers. I guess along the lines of retention, we had a building staff representative meeting. We've had some follow-up committee meetings to kind of talk about some of the issues, so we'll be working through some of those things. So hopefully staff will start to see that, their input is being taken seriously, and we're at least trying to work and find solutions. We maybe can't answer every question the way they would like or an individual would like, but we're certainly taking those things to heart and trying to work on some of those things. So I would say that certainly meets some of the things we're talking about, trying to retain staff members as well.
Mm-hmm.
You heard from Mr. Tippett on safe social emotional environment. Again, a lot of things that we are doing to try to help promote that. The Packers have been helpful with us a couple of times in this regard, with our students writing the grants. One of the successful grants, they actually had an interview with people in the Green Bay Packer organization. So it is something that's important. It's something that's become part of our culture as we move forward as well, trying to really make some overt actions to help people understand this is our intention. We would like people to really feel comfortable being here. So I would say that's our most recent update on that safe social emotional place.
Great. School board governance. We're working on the strategic plan. We're working on the handbooks. We spent some extra time on that. So
You have a meeting coming up the week after the school board convention to kind of wrap up some of those
yes, we
kinds
have
of
our
things.
winter retreat.
And a strong presence at the WASB School Board Convention too.
Yes.
Speaks volumes to school board culture.
Yeah,
We're all
for
committed to improving. Mitch, I do have a question about the student teachers. Are they spread across all three buildings in the district, or are they centralized in the elementary or in the high school or up middle school?
We have 2 in the elementary and 3 in this building, and I would say it's a pretty good spread because they're working in the, one is going to be split between Mr. Robinson and Mr. Carey, and they both have touches with middle school students. And then the other 2 are in the music department who both have touches middle school, high school. So I think
Fantastic.
it'll be a good experience for our student teachers and for our own students as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Move on. Go
All
ahead.
right, one item on school board governance. I saw number 5, committee reports.
Yeah.
I was thinking we made a decision to not have those as like item for information. It would just be the consent agenda, and if there was questions, it would be brought up at that time.
Yeah, good point.
I just don't want to lose sight of little wins like that streamline how we operate.
For sure. I think the intent, I mean, the overall intent, I think, is to have the committee chairs report on action items that need a vote. So
Okay.
we can certainly gloss over that part when we get to it. And I'll give the chairs a chance to just give any highlights if they want, but no, good point. We don't want to spend a lot of time, reviewing minutes of the entire meeting, Okay. School board election timeline.
There are 3 candidates for the 2 seats up for election. There will be no primary. The election is April 1st. We will know the 2 new board members after the evening votes are tallied. I will put together a spreadsheet for anybody that wants to follow along on reporting from the townships in the city. We will begin working on trying to put together a series of questions. Last year, we just asked the questions and shared out the information. We were not able to make any kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for?
In-person forum? Or,
Yeah, the school board, the election forum, we didn't have that last year. We weren't able to get a date that would work. March is awful month to try to schedule anything in, but we'll certainly work on trying to get the questions together, get them out, and posting them wherever we can as we move forward to make sure that at least all 3 candidates have an opportunity to have their voices and positions heard.
So is plan A an in-person forum and plan B is recorded questions on video, or are you?
It might be
leaning
A and
towards-
A1, basically. I'm not sure, based on what March brings and how, and we've had our media class together, that forum in the past. And last year it was a combination of candidates and our students being so busy that we weren't able to pull that off. So we will look at trying to find a date where we could schedule forum, and if not, the fallback obviously would be getting the questions out and posting responses.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions about the timeline? Okay, school district budget timeline for next year.
So our timeline has been the same in past years. We request that any need for any funding for the remainder of this school year be to the business office by the Friday before spring break starts. In this case, that's March 21st. So if I know I need more pencils for my classroom, I need to get that purchase order in by March 21st. So whatever that is, we have a couple of positions. I'll bring up high school, or like the art department in both, that need supplies, and it doesn't do me any good to get 100 pounds of clay in March if I don't need it until May, because it dries out and it becomes useless. So we allow them to hold on to some of their budget monies for those types of purchases. So there's a couple of programs like that that we know are going to need to expend money past that March 21st deadline. We also ask that to be the same date that they put together their budget requests for the next school year. So by March 21st, it's whatever you need to spend out for the remainder of this year. And then what are you looking for? What are your needs for the upcoming school year? That gives us time then to start to put together those budget numbers. Where do they compare? Is it a big increase from last year? If not, it gives us an opportunity, building administrators, myself, to go, help me understand this need. You're asking for 15% more in your budget this year compared to last year. What are these things? Is it something that needs to come through your classroom budget? Is it something that could be picked up through the technology budget? But it allows us to be a little bit more specific and strategic in our budgeting for the upcoming year. We already have Danielle working on the budget prediction for next year. We purchased the Baird model again, so they have all of this year's financial information in place. And then we can use that to forecast moving forward. In February, we should have the CPI numbers for any contracts that begin July 1. So that'll give us a starting point looking at where might we fall on salaries. I have reached out to insurance. The information I got back from the insurance company is they looked at our numbers from our broker, our agent, said our numbers are looking good right now, but the company itself probably wants another month or two of information to kind of help give us a better prediction. Their recommendation was using 8%. I believe we used 7% in our forecast, but I'm comfortable thinking that we might come in under 8%. We might hit that 7% number that we used in our referendum forecast. So we were using kind of a 3% pay raise and a 7%. I think we're going to be really, really close to that. Right now, if you go out and look at CPI, if our contract year started June 1, it's sitting at 2.99. So I think we're going to be pretty close to those numbers that we were projecting moving forward. We'll use our budget forecast on current staffing. If we have some changeover, if we have any retirements, that will be a positive impact on the district, especially if it's a veteran experienced teacher and we bring in somebody lower on our pay scale, so that that could have some positive influences on where our budget falls. But we hope to have some good solid budget numbers. I would think middle to end of April. I'm hoping I would have our insurance numbers in so we can really just kind of really plug in those numbers into that Baird model and get a good idea where we're looking at. What do we need? Do we need cuts? Do we not need cuts? Those kinds of things.
Good. Questions about that? All right, budget comparison from last year.
So in your board packet, you should see the December of 23 budget cycle. We have expended about 38.6% of our budget in December of last year. In December of 24, we have expended about 40.4%, so less than 2% difference. Like I said before, we know that we're in a deficit model, so I'm not shocked that our budget is a little bit further expended at this point in time, because we know that. But being within 2%, I feel very comfortable about where we're where we're falling in our budget process for the course of this school year, this fiscal year.
And food service looks like it's pretty much on schedule.
Right. That, we had discussed that in the finance committee meeting.
Mhm.
We feel very comfortable on what our projections were and where we're falling with those projections. We are at a slight deficit in one of the accounts in food service, but that we knew coming, or I wouldn't say we knew coming in, but we knew that there were a few maintenance projects that had to be done, a couple of equipment pieces that need to be purchased. And that's what forced that particular line item to be a deficit. We brought in a budget surplus in our Fund 50 account. So that is easily covered by that budget surplus and we will not spend that down during the course of this school year.
Questions about that? Okay. We can briefly touch on committee reports. I guess committee of the whole was technically a policy committee. Christine?
Yeah, we took a look at, over the holiday break, all three handbooks, and then we came together and just shared thoughts on each one. There were a couple of topics that we discussed. But a lot of it was that there were discrepancies between each of the handbooks. They weren't in order, like they didn't really follow the same order. And so there were some policies in one handbook, but not in another. So we talked about cleaning all of those up. And when I say that we are going to clean them up, I mean that table back there is going to go through and clean them up. There were a couple of topics that came up to discuss and change around the wording. And then you sent some additional thoughts afterwards, which I'm assuming that we'll talk about at winter retreat when we're together.
Yeah, I mean, they were shared with the admin team.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I think they'll
good.
incorporate them into their revisions, and then whenever we see their future draft.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing was getting it basically down to one handbook for all buildings.
Yes.
And then some addendums or appendices for specifics to each building, but basically it becomes one handbook.
Yes.
Oh,
It was fun.
yeah. Any finance highlights?
We reviewed the Pointer Kids Club year to date and the food service year to date. And both look promising. And if trends continue, even with the deficit in food service, November showed a nice month. So I think once we move farther away from the outlays at the beginning for some supplies and stuff, that'll clean itself up nicely. The Pointer Kids Club is running in the positive as well. So both were good to review and go over, but both are performing as we need them to. So.
And personnel is you.
Yep. There was two topics. One was around moving administrative assistants from hourly to salary. The other one was around number of snow days for support staff. Both required kind of more investigation by Mr. Wainwright, and sounds like we'll have action to take next month.
Yeah. Good. Move to the action agenda. First is the approval of the open enrollment seats.
So you should have two documents in your board packet. We have to approve them. If you accept the recommendations, you could approve them together as one. If you have questions and would like to change something, but we have program limits in special education based on staffing, based on how we provide those supports. If we have to contract services or some of the supports, we have every right to not accept additional open enrollment students in those particular areas. And we have kind of been in a similar situation for several years. For special education, the only opening we have would be speech and language specifically. If a student open enrolls and they have speech and language needs, and that's the only support they need, we could accept up to 4 students in that area. And that is district-wide. Question?
I'm recalling that we talked quite a bit about our speech and language program sometime in the last several months, maybe less in the last school year at least. And that we had stretched that program quite thin. We did reallocate some resources and do some things to boost that up, but I'm questioning if we are putting ourselves by allowing up to 4 open enrollments, if we're putting ourselves in a spot where we could potentially stretch ourselves really thin again if we were to have an influx of students that reside in our district that need those services. And I'd like to be a little protective of that. An observation or a thought I'd like to share.
And I would jump in before anybody else. That's a very valid point. If you remember, we posted for a full-time, couldn't hire one. We contracted and basically got 80% staff person. So we would like to come back and post for a full-time speech and language person in-house again next year. If we get that, the 4 would easily be absorbed, but there always is that potential that families move in that require these services that we can't deny legally because they are our student completely. So that is a valid point and a valid concern.
I did run the numbers with 2.2, which is what we currently have. And we hope to actually have a 2.4 if we're able to hire at a 1.0 full-time equivalent this year with that one that we have contracted. So it does allow a little flux. My projections include everybody that I know of coming out of the 3, any referrals, any like those things that are currently going on.
So what if we approve the 4 spots, post a 1.0, and then don't find a candidate again?
You still have to take the 4 spots.
That's right.
Whatever
So,
you approve is what has to be in place.
right. So, can that be absorbed with our 80% contracted staff, or would we increase the percent contract?
It was 80% due to the employee that we contracted with. We were asking for
That was the limit.
right?
Okay.
So I figured it with our current present staffing.
Okay.
So
So at the 80? Okay. And did you recommend the 4?
I did.
Okay.
And I have a bunch of analytics that I went through and did it.
I mean, I'd like to be protective, but I have an awful lot of faith in Mrs. Klein's ability to estimate what we're going to need.
In a conversation that we had, you also shared that it's very rare for somebody to just need speech and language. So if somebody comes in and needs speech and language and another service, we would have the ability to deny that open enrollment application because we don't have the space in the other service that might be required. But it is a valid point. Then I will go to, so I can let you decide if you want to vote, how you want to vote together or not. The other recommendation then would be for regular ed classrooms, and you have that recommendation in place. Based on our meeting current enrollments, we would look at in essence, trying to close off, and I hate to say it that way, but we would not be able to accept open enrollments based on our recommendations in third grade, fourth grade, and eighth grade, based on the current, what would be the current classroom sizes next year. Eighth grade would have 61. And then fourth grade has 68, and third grade would have 54.
So under eighth grade, the board policy is different than the admin recommendation as far as kids per class.
Correct.
So your recommendation is based on your recommended max per class.
That is correct.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My other question was, historically, we had been less than comfortable with having zeros in any grade, and we're more comfortable with having just at least one in every grade. So,
And we knew that. We had that as part of our conversation at the admin meeting.
Yeah.
You know,
it
knowing,
doesn't mean
Right.
that you recommend that.
right.
Right.
We know that if we give you an inch, you'll take them.
Well, and I don't have a strong opinion on changing these numbers, but I know some people, just to jog everyone's memory, that was a conversation we had last year about.
Well, I mean, my question would be, how did it go this year?
How did this year go?
Yeah, so we had at least one spot in every grade last year. Last year was the first year that we did it, I think, because I think the previous year we just went with some did have zeros, but then last year we were like, could we at least have one in every grade so that if a family wanted open enroll and they have a kid in the third grade, that they could, they could enroll them so that they could get the other kids in. So we're not splitting up families. So yeah, we put one in every grade last year.
The other thing your policy also states, if they did split their family in year one, year two, the other children.
I've just always felt that's really not realistic that a family's going to split their kids up and go to one school and another school with all the transportation that involves. So I guess my question is, for Tom and Brooke, I guess, like how that went this year and if having an open spot in every class was an issue.
Well, I just look at current third grade. I think we had correct 8 open enroll. I had down from the office, but we had a lot of students in the district come in too.
Mhm.
So it was kind of a combination of both, which obviously jumps the number up to 68, which is a big class size.
It's a big class.
I know.
That's a challenge in that scenario. It's
Right.
probably the hardest. The rest of them were smaller, which didn't really have a huge factor. That's the classes.
And I can't remember off the top of my head, but I thought that one of the grade levels that we added a seat, we actually filled that seat then through an open enrollment request, but I don't remember which grade level that was. Because I do remember there were some zeros that were recommended, and the motion was to make sure that there was at least one seat available at every grade level, and I think one of those was taken by an open enrolled student.
The third grade teachers feedback, because just from what I know that a lot of in a small classroom, the classrooms are also very small. Just the amount of time that the teacher is able to spend with the students when you're getting above 20s compared to the below. Now you're cutting into each child's individual learning time. So I would love to get feedback from those 3 teachers. I can speak from up here going into classrooms where like the 6th grade is smaller than the current 7th grade. The amount of time that teachers can individually, I'll just compare math, for instance. That individualized time for a student who's struggling can be more time spent with that teacher than in the 7th grade where there's some sections that are, over 20. And so it gets to be, all the things that we're talking about is improving student learning. And so that's definitely one piece. You think it was just one more kid, but it's one more kid who needs attention and needs you know, even if they're understanding it right away, there's still a lot of check-ins that take place to make sure that they're getting that learning, so. Just all impacts.
Mhm. What is our open enrollment right now? That's like, I mean, just like imagine the financial situation we'd be in if we didn't have, that's 2 classes.
12%, right, of our
that we're
population.
getting. It's like such a catch-22. Like, I understand Brooke, and like, you know, when I think about my own kids, I'd love to have them in a class with 12 or something like that. And, you know, three teachers, like whatever they do in Sweden or 10, right? And everybody with a violin. But, you know, like that's like astounding, right? It's 2 whole class sizes that we're getting in. And like, how long ago would we have been in a referendum situation, an operational referendum, if not, but for having the income of all that. So, I mean, I like to see at least one. I actually think with your comment, I'd prefer just to plan for kids moving into the district, this speech stuff, and actually cap it at 0 instead of 4. Because I just feel like been on the board now 3 years, and every year we're coming back to ask for new staff positions to handle these things. And at some point, you know,
Given some of the things that are going around or going on in districts around us, do you anticipate an influx of, and I know you can't, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you have any sense that like, oh, we could potentially fill 13 spots at the 2nd grade?
I was just gonna bring up, if you remember, a few years ago, we had a retirement at that 2nd grade level. And the recommendation coming forward was to not fill it.
Right.
And we had kind of a similar number. And guess which grade everybody in the universe moved into?
Mhm.
You know, and we ended up doing basically a long-term sub to get through that 2nd semester. And, you know, who's to say history will repeat itself that way? But there are other issues going around us that may cause families to look at it and let's go up the road, you know, let's go to Mineral Point, you know, they're accepting open enrollment. They had a successful referendum. You know, there are a lot of things that might attract more people to the district. And having the ability to absorb in some places makes us attractive. I just, you know, I caution going crazy with it, but you're right. You know, this is the most open enrolled students in that the district has had is this year. And it wasn't that long ago when we were the opposite. We were losing more than bringing in. So we were losing money due to open enrollment. So we want to continue being a really solid school district and a great option for people to move into the community and make us their home school. But yes, we've certainly benefited from open enrollment over the last few years.
Unique in that situation.
We
one
are.
of the very few schools that can say that.
Right.
One of the only
A lot
states
of
that's growing in
other-
the whole state, schools
Right.
that's growing in the whole state.
It's not in a metropolitan area.
Right.
Sun Prairie is
Oh,
growing.
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Right.
So I'd support at least one in each class to give families some options. It sounded like only one of them was taken last year, so it's not like it was a big crisis. We had talked about getting rid of the policy at one point of having to wait a year. And, you know, we still haven't done that, so that restriction's still in place. And I don't know if you weren't really making a motion, Joni, but I kind of support capping it at 0 in anticipation of people moving into the district so that we build in some space. That said, I'm not going to make the motion, but that's my feeling.
Well, I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. I think one is, I mean, the admin looked at all these classes and made these recommendations. I feel like each class is more than a number. You know, I think some classes require a lot of intense energy and academic attention and some maybe don't. And I think that may be driving some of these recommendations a little bit. I also want to be sensitive to the fact that, kind of to Brooke's point, we just have to be on the alert for kind of what happened to the second grade, where we tried to get away with 2 large classes and, we got overwhelmed. And I think this is the opportunity for us to just kind of ask ourselves, at what point are we compromising our teacher's ability to reach every kid by overfilling a certain classroom, and the counter argument is what's the difference between 0 and 1, in the grand scheme of things. And I get that. I'm paying a special attention to that, to next year's 4th grade class of 68. I might be a hard 0 on that one. I know that the other 2, I think you could talk me into adding 1. And then I think as far as the special ed numbers go, I don't know. I mean, I feel like Angie spent a bunch of time. I mean, she of all people is aware of our special ed staffing needs, so I feel like, and if she's running some analytics and these are the numbers she feels like we can support, I feel confident in those recommendations. Should we start by?
I think Mrs. McGraw had a comment she wanted to make.
I think you kind of hit on it. I think when you're talking like that 8th grade number, I think you are dealing with students who are more independent than at that current 3rd grade level, where there's just so many more of them. So if you were looking to add, like personally, I would say add 1 to 8th, or that larger grade. I think I think that we could get away with. I mean, it is always more with student learning, but they do have a lot more independence at the grade level.
That's a good point.
Tom, could you tell me about the difference with I'm not wrong. The class that Mitch was referring to going to 5th grade, right? Where we cut them down to 2 teachers in 1st grade. But it looks like we're, comfortable adding a ton of kids there. And I hadn't really heard much about the current 2nd grade class going into 3rd grade, where we're saying 0. I mean, they're right at the average, I guess, but has that been a class that's struggling academically, or is it more just based on that they're hitting the number?
So the number, there is some support there, but definitely based on, we're looking at 18 the number.
I think that 2nd grade class has some unique diverse learners for different reasons than special education.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to say more because I don't want to be able to identify them, but when we talk about our changing population, that 2nd grade class is represented in that population.
Okay.
And we might not have the structural supports for them, and then adding even more, the teachers are already providing a lot of things for that, for some of the students in that classroom.
Is it possible next year, like we can have that information like in this table?
What kind of
Like
information?
that kind of context.
I'm guessing that maybe you're talking when we put together the document to add a long-term sub in that 2nd grade, and it went down to 2. We put down specifics of like what percentage in each classroom was receiving.
I mean, even just general, like
the why behind the recommendation. I'll support the recommendation 100%. It would just be good to know that context since we're not here every day. My 2 cents.
Go ahead.
It helps the board members too.
I understand that. In the past, you used to get, here's a list here's the grade level. You didn't get to know the name because they didn't want to have the perception of, well, that's Mitch Wainwright's kid. We don't want his kid in the school district. So we're not allowing that one, but we'll approve all the other ones. So there's a lot of information that really can't and shouldn't be shared with the board, you know, because, and part of that is eliminated because we're able to, in our case, have to cap some of our special education open enrollment numbers with a recommendation. And then the regular ed recommendation comes separately. So, you know, I wouldn't want to come here and say, well, we're not going to allow any seniors to come into place because we have, you know, 6 kids with IEPs and 4 kids that, you know, are medically fragile, you know, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, geez, without mentioning names, I know who those kids are now. So we don't want to identify them, and information that is shared with you outside of closed session is, you know, open to the public at any time either. So, I mean, it becomes a little bit more difficult to kind of put more specifics into those kinds of things. Do you
I
understand?
don't mean anything more specific. I think what she just said be in the spreadsheet. I mean, if we can talk about it, it can be in the spreadsheet, right?
Like the way that they just answered
Yeah,
the questions
yeah.
in an open forum
Right.
is acceptable
Yeah.
enough. Just say like this class has whatever, but I don't know, let's move on.
Yeah, I think saying something like this class needs extra support or something like that, if you feel comfortable, you know, just some kind of justification.
I wouldn't really call it a justification here. It's me just trying to learn
Sure.
why the recommendation is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We can work on trying to provide more of that ahead of time. Absolutely.
I move that we accept the recommendations for both special education and open enrollment general education as presented.
Good. We have a motion on the table. We have a second.
You're comfortable with the 4 at for speech and language?
Let's have a second and then we can have a
I'll
more
second.
discussion. Okay. So we've got Heisner, Johnston. Anyone else want
I have
I'm on the
this
fence
is-
too, and I made
this
the
is
motion.
the one time because I like to just roll with administrative. I mean, they understand, but this is also where a fiscal meets classroom and
I'm happy to kind of explain a little bit behind my thought process. So, you know, speech and language has many components of why you can receive support. But as Mitch said, any student plans that have additional program supports, you know, be it an occupational therapy, a physical therapy, or a special education need, those programs are all closed. So the speech and language kids that we're going to most likely get are those with speech, sound production, articulation concerns, because usually those are the only kinds of students typically that have just a speech only IEP. Most often, those are young children, and most often you can group them by like sounds. So you're being able to like kind of pair them in a small group, work really on articulation, like maybe they're just not saying their S sound, right? So the complexity when we look at like workload of how much our staff need to like, right, there's time for all of our students, but like some of those really complex students, you have a lot of collaborating with assistants or other teachers or other therapists, and the team's really large. Typically, these are pretty isolated, focused. You come in, you do some remediation therapy for speech, and they move on and move out. So I like my prediction is that this population, it would be like some 4-year-olds, some 5-year-olds whose speech progression usually goes pretty quickly as well. And they're not really hard, complex, multifaceted programs because those other programs, they wouldn't be geared with those. So that's why I felt comfortable, like, you know, if it was Miss McGraw and she came in and she needed to work on an R, we have 15 other groups that are working on R, and she could be absorbed into a small group and receive her therapy that way. So just kind of thinking about the limitations with the other program being closed, in my mind envisioned kind of what that IEP would most likely look like. And I think we could absorb that because those you know, again, the speech technology is a very different than a language service or you know, an alternate language or those types of things too. And Mitch was right, like any other services would also be closed. So it's a very specific IEP that would be allowed to come in.
You want to finish your
Yeah,
comment?
so, I just have a hard time coming off a referendum, thinking about the one or two times we've had a family of four that couldn't come in, because we had a 0 in one spot. And I have a hard time closing off a potential, for lack of a better term, revenue opportunity, for that spot. I will, in light of the retention goal of the board, I definitely can support a 0 in fourth grade. But looking at the fact that we're okay going to 60 in first grade, it seems like we could be okay going to 55 in third grade. And like Brooke said, we probably could have room for 1 in eighth grade. I fear that this would be a horrible year when we're trying to stretch the referendum as far as we can to lose a family of four, and the revenue that comes with them. But again, in light of retention and thinking about the classroom and the students as well, I would support a 0 in the fourth grade, but would like to see a 1 in that third and eighth grade.
Where my head's at too.
Well, Joni, would you like to amend?
I
your
would be
motion?
willing
We
to
could
amend
vote.
my motion.
We could vote on your motion and
No.
make a new one.
I would like
It
to,
could pass, who knows?
I would like to amend my motion to accept the enrollments as presented, with the exception of putting a 1 in the third grade column and a 1 in the eighth grade column.
Johnson, would you like to second that?
I will
motion?
I will second that amended motion.
We good? Okay. Will, you know,
No comment.
no comment. Okay. Anyone else want to, anything? Okay. I like where we landed. Angie,
So we're presented with changes to third and eighth grade to equal 1.
Correct.
Yes.
Fourth grade at 0.
the fourth grade is 0 and the special ed numbers are
And
unchanged.
special ed recommendations.
Those special ed recommendations are unchanged.
Heisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes,
Harris,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay. Next up is, okay, help us through that.
Next up is the WASB resolutions. Typically what you do, you have a WASB delegate to the convention next week. And they vote on resolutions. Typically what you've done in the past is authorize delegate from Mineral Point to vote in the best interest of the Mineral Point School District. You don't review each resolution individually and vote up or down. You basically grant your delegate that authority.
Is it? So the motion would be just to grant the delegate the authority.
Act in the best interest of the Mineral Point School District.
And if the current delegate could not attend and another member replace that delegate, that wouldn't matter in terms of
Correct.
this motion, correct?
Correct.
They would just assume that authority given.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll take a motion to grant voting authority to the WASB delegate for the state convention upcoming.
I'll move.
Seconded.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
I read, so I'm supposed to be the delegate. I'm not sure if I'm going because my ankle's not getting any better. And I'm not sure about rolling around on a scooter in Milwaukee in the cold for a week. So Joni, I guess I'll let you know.
Okay.
Because I think you'd be the natural person to go. I read through all the motions. So you have the motions that are in here, but there's also this other set of motions that school districts wanted to have that they weren't accepted.
Mhm.
And last year when I went to the meeting, it was a lot of controversial stuff. And this year it was not really controversial at all. They were just kind of like, well, we appreciated what you said, but it's already going to be covered in this other thing. I thought the most interesting one is actually on page 45 of your board packet. It's the very first one, which is about adapting. And of course, this doesn't become law, like when it's voted on, it's just a recommendation, but about teacher certification. So just like making it more flexible for these particularly rural school districts that are having trouble attracting talent, which thankfully is not us. But just to be aware of what's going on around the state, you know, it seems pretty difficult to attract teachers. And so they're kind of changing it that you can, if you have experience in the field and whatever, you can get the emergency license. But everything else was more or less wordsmithing and stuff. So.
And if you read any resolutions and want to give the delegate feedback, between now and the convention, you can certainly do that. This motion is just granting the delegate the authority to vote on behalf of our board. Okay. We have a Gelding Heisner motion second, Angie.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. All right, moving right along. Board business, just reminders. We have a winter retreat the Monday after the convention. We don't have a location determined yet.
The date for that.
It's the 27th.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a place where you want to meet, or should we just meet here? Or
They'll come to your house,
So
that you don't-
don't come to my house.
so you don't have to go very
I'm
far.
gonna step on a bunch of Legos so you can come over.
That's normal.
We could just meet here.
meet here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Okay, we'll meet here. Andy.
Is here available?
On the
library.
27th.
Is somewhere in the building available. I mean, it doesn't have to
It
be
should be.
library.
I don't think, we'll double check, but I don't think there's any other meetings going on, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we, given that most of us or several of us are attending WASB, do we need to have that as a notice of quorum?
It is posted.
Thank you.
Yeah, potential quorum, no
Think
business
that's the word I was
action taken,
looking
so
for.
yeah, that's already posted.
I think that's it. I mean, our next staff rep meeting is February 17th, but we can talk about that at the next February meeting. Mitch, I had a thought about mid-year superintendent evaluation. Can we tackle that at the February meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Which is scheduled for February 10th. Anything else on board business from the crew? Okay, motion to adjourn. Harris. Second, Gelding. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, 7:05.
Thank you.